back on with Live from the Heartland at Heartland Cafe on the lovely corner of Glenwood and Lunt. Familiar home for some 40-plus years here at the Heartland. We're pleased that it continues and excited for whatever new unveiling that Tom's going to do next door with the bar transformation. So I don't even know what to say. He's not here to explain it to us. So maybe next week when we're here for the 5th Saturday of the month, we might get Tom Rosenfeld up here to talk about what's going on next door. Right now, I'm so happy to say good morning and welcome back to Dave Kraft, the longtime executive director and watchdog for all of us of Nuclear Energy Information Service here in Chicago. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to say happy Earth Day to you, Katie.
Amen, my brother.
Happy Earth Day to you, Tom.
Thank you, David.
And on the road, happy Earth Day to Mike James.
Yes.
He's not here today.
Yes, he's up in the hopefully friendlier skies. Sorry, I couldn't help but
Being
do
dragged
that.
through the aisles.
Yeah, let him try. That would be a big mistake.
A long drive to Texas. My gosh.
So, happy Earth Day back. We've got an amazing lot of activism going on as we speak. People are gathering downtown for the Science March. And I know you want to talk more about the People's Climate March, which is next week. But can we start with what's going on downtown today and what's good for folks to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Today, the March for Science is taking place, and as you pointed out earlier, the rendezvous point is at Jackson and Columbus, and this for us, we see this as the next step in a continuation of what hopefully will be 4 years of marches, protests, resistance, whatever it takes to bring rationality and reality back to the United States government. This is totally organized by the science community. It's endorsed by hopefully
everybody.
Yeah, everybody who has not gone to an American school.
They actually started organizing it right after the election.
Yes.
Before the inauguration, they were working on. They were aware that the EPA was. Well, let's talk about what's happening at the EPA, I guess.
Good question. There have been a lot of rumors about what's happening at EPA or not happening. But, when you look at the pronouncements of the administration so far, it bodes very poorly for rationality, for science, and I'm using capital letters on these, rational, reality, science with the capital S. It's make it up as you go along.
And then flip-flop a week later.
Sure, that's the thing that differentiates, I think, the current administration from previous ones is every day is a new reality.
Yeah.
It almost validates one of the scientific theories that there are multiple universes going on at once. This guy just bleeds them in one day after another.
I didn't know we were going to be talking about chaos theory this morning.
Well, here we are.
That's very kind of you,
What impressed me
David.
about this Science March is that it's worldwide. There are 500 cities participating in this, and at least this week, the frame seems to be, this is not an anti-Trump thing. This is about science is important. Science and facts are important for us to live by. And the fact that we would have to restate that is astonishing to me.
Well, we think we're so sophisticated here in the 21st century with our gizmos, gadgets, and whatnots. We're still pretty primitive, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we are staring into a new dark age. I mean, it'll just have better toys and a lot better drugs maybe, but this is a real possibility. When reality can be so profoundly ignored and disregarded, and not just that, in the United States we seem to actually have this kind of pejorative edge to being smart or having intelligence. I saw a quote by Frank Zappa the other day about this. It was kind of hilarious. It's like, why do we treat intelligence as some sort of a disease in the United States?
My buddy Frank said that?
He certainly did. Something
Frank,
like it.
I love
but
Frank.
That gets to the core of what the Science March is about today. It's taking a stand of, hell, it took us 200,000 years to get here.
Right.
We're not going back.
Not going back. Not going back. Right. Which, similarly, we have to do this on every front. Just by the way, because we forgot to mention it in case you missed it. Everybody needs to be talking to Governor Rauner this week about his claim that he will veto the State Bill 50,
Yeah.
the click to protect reproductive rights in this state. He's gone back on his word, so check that out. That's another, do we really have to do this again? And evidently, yes. We have to do a lot of things again.
Well, Katie, you were talking about Heartland being over 40 years old, and Nuclear Energy Information Service turns 36 this June. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing we've found is that life is an endless tickler file, where the card works its way to the front every 10, 15, 20 years or so, or some, local idiot gets elected who
My
shouldn't
God,
be there.
that's a kind way to put it, Dave.
And you have to fight it over again. But maybe that's not such a bad thing, because we can be role models for our kids and say, hey, put the iPad down and get out and do something. And that's what today is about with the Science March.
Well,
Getting out there and taking a stand, being in the streets. Who knows who's going to show up? But if you're in favor of science, get your hat and coat on now. You can listen to this, on your phone or something, and get down to Grant Park.
Yeah, that's right. Go now. The rally is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. The march goes from 11 to 12. And the expo, which is down around the Field Museum,
Right.
Is from noon to 2 p.m. or 3 p.m.? Probably 3 p.m. Yeah. So, yeah, that's something you definitely want to do. Now, let's talk also about, a couple things. I mean, we got a guy throwing the nuclear option around. We've got people talking about nuclear weapons. You have been teaching us about the dangers and the uses, if there are any, of nuclear for a long, long time, and you help point out the lack of safety of certain of our constructions in that realm.
Power plants.
Yeah, the power plants. Where do we stand now with that?
Well, I have good news. I
Good.
normally
Thank God.
I'm the glass half broken person that comes on your show, But I always bring bad news.
Forget
I don't know
Fuller.
why you invite me back, quite frankly. But today I'm here to announce that the nuclear age is over.
All right.
Officially, we are declaring it over. It's
Somebody
being
let the guy
replaced-
know it's
Her and her
1600
date,
Pennsylvania
flag
Avenue.
No, he doesn't have to know.
Okay.
It's being replaced by what's called the age of decommissioning. And that's a
Right.
a geeky word. What it really means is, no more power plants. They're too expensive, they're too dirty, they're too dangerous, and the ones we got are old, just like us, And they're wearing out too, and now we have to deal with the detritus of the nuclear age. So we are entering the age of decommissioning. It was coined by Linda Lewison, one of our board members, about 5 years ago, and she said, "Look, it's over. We can't afford this anymore," and she's right. So now we have to pay attention to what do we do with 116 boxes full of Hiroshimas, which are scattered around the United States, and 80,000 tons of spent reactor fuel, which we don't know where to put, 200,000 tons worldwide. That's our next agenda item. So good news, nuclear age is over, except in the Senate.
You are so weird to think that's good news the way you ended it.
Well, over time you redefine your levels of
Yeah,
success.
yeah.
So
you know?
if-
I love the glass broken.
If we're indeed at that moment, or this moment, where do you fall today on the bury it versus find another way to process it and create more energy?
Versus shoot it to the moon.
Oh, there are all kinds of weird schemes that have come up. Our position since 1982, the year after we were formed, NEIS that is, has been the nation, the world, needs permanent, deep geological disposal sites where you put it away, it goes back to the earth where it started from, and it stays there. It doesn't fall into the hands of any goofball, rogue state or even some of the great powers of the world, which
Those goofballs, too.
Yeah, they like to call
Right.
themselves that. That's the other thing. We have to realize that there isn't really practical use for it. You try to do what the other alternative is on reprocessing, and you end up with a bigger mess than you had before. So, it's time to just say
You
that's
didn't end
over
up
too.
with that much energy, and you had more junk left over at the end of that, right? At least as far as our
The great
technology
irony.
is developed.
The great irony. Yes.
It really is.
So we are not in favor of reprocessing. We're in favor of permanent disposal. Get it out of the hands of the human race, because we are clearly not mature enough to handle it. And
Wow.
It's going to take another, 10, 20,000 years for us maybe to get there. So I can't wait. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Dave, you recently had a reason to put out a release around one of your main targets over the years, the Zion plant. What's the status of that plant now, and why did it end up in the news?
Okay, Zion is a reactor originally built in the 70s by Commonwealth Edison. It did not last the 40 years it was promised. It only closed at about 25, 26, something like that in the late 90s. It sat there on the lakefront, the drinking water supply for 16 million people for years. But about 7-8 years ago, Exelon, the inheritor of the mess, decided it was time to tear the thing down. And that's what's happening. They're actually tearing down these 2 huge 7-story structures and all the other buildings there. Unfortunately, again, we have no place to put the 1,000 plus tons of spent reactor fuel, so that's going to have to stay up there indefinitely. So the reactor site's being torn down. The waste is going to stay there. But there are local problems which have been overlooked for decades, which we're trying to get the state legislature to address. The 2 problems are, number one, when you close down a reactor, you totally screw over the local community and the local workforce. And that is how Exelon was so skillful in managing to get its horrible nuclear bailout passed in the legislature last year. You had the communities at Clinton and Quad Cities going, oh, dear us, poor us, our tax base goes down the toilet. Well, you had years to plan for it. So we are proposing the legislature address that so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
We don't want, these guys, the bailouts are the new nuclear terrorism. When you can go to a community and say, bail us out or we'll shoot your economy, that's terrorism. That's
right.
extortion.
That's right.
And we don't want Exelon to have that
Well
anymore.
said.
Now, the second part, though, gets back to the waste being left there. And this is where we're on board with the mayor of Zion, Al Hill, with the local politicians up that way, Republicans and Democrats, and Congressman Brad Schneider, 10th District, who is going to be proposing legislation in Congress that will economically compensate the communities for their losses, because nobody wants to put a business next to a radioactive waste dump for 50 years. So we call it the Make Whole legislation, and that's the second thing that we really have to get behind and support these communities that are really getting screwed over by the nuclear age.
Yeah. What's your, I know you've got a list of things to cover. I want to make sure we cover them.
Well, the 2 big things, you mentioned the People's Climate March.
Right.
Yeah.
That's next Saturday.
Next Saturday's
So,
March.
you don't have to get your hat and coat on, but be ready, folks, because, again, this has to be a series of events. It has to be a series of tied together activities that shows we're not going to dry up and blow away just because it's a rainy day or it snows or, they tweak the machine a little bit. This People's Climate March is also a nationwide thing. There are going to be hundreds of thousands of people in Washington, D.C., but there is a Chicago component which will begin at 12 noon at Federal Plaza next week. Mm-hmm. There will be an hour-and-a-half program there, and then people are going to walk down to Trump Tower and do a rally down at Trump Tower at the end of the day, and we'll be finished by 4 o'clock. This is bringing in people from all walks of life. We've invited the organizers from the Women's March and the March for Science to send contingents. Labor is involved in this. The environmental community is involved in this. This is where everybody gets behind it and says, you can't have an economy without an environment. That's the logical order of progression. So this is your chance to stand up for the environment by coming down next Saturday, the 29th, or going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
It's
the
up to
D.C.
you.
March is going to be really big.
Yep. Yep.
They plan on surrounding the White House, I believe. Or is
Well,
it the Congress?
Whatever.
Whatever.
If they're allowed to get close enough.
Yeah, there's going to be lots and lots of folks in D.C. And just like with the Women's March and today's march, the Science March, all over the world.
That's right.
I mean, really, what people have to understand, and I think most U.S. thoughtful, paying attention citizens do understand that our current administration threatens everybody, not just us. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's a little afraid out there.
There's one last piece I got to get in before we go.
Go for it, yeah.
I want to honor Heartland Cafe. Today is also the 27th anniversary of the best Earth Day Chicago has ever seen back in 1990. It was
Right.
Earth Day 90, the 20th anniversary.
That was a good one.
In a period of 4 months, a bunch of nobodies, and I mean nobodies, came together. It was Mike and Katie from Heartland Cafe. It was Healing Earth Resource Center, Nuclear Energy Information Service. I mean, we had nothing in November of 1989. Raised $250,000.
Yeah, that was
had
an
the
amazing
biggest
thing.
party in Lincoln Park that has ever taken place. 100,000 people showed up on the first 80-degree Sunday of 1990 to celebrate Earth Day. And we got a letter from the alderman, Ed Eisendrath, afterwards saying the park was in better shape after you guys left than when we had it before. I want to honor that because it shows the continuity of people
That's
who
good.
care.
I'm touched.
You guys cared.
Hey, Helen Doria had a lot to do with that
Doria,
too.
and the late
Bless
Kathy
her.
Osterman, who
Yeah.
headed up, the
Yeah.
department that got us in the door.
The both of them.
And let me
This
just say,
can happen. We can do this.
and for skeptics
That's
out there
nice.
who feel that we promote protests too often and too many marches and another meeting to go to,
No one
there's
thinks
no
that, do
doubt in my mind that we killed the first effort to knock off Obamacare by speaking up and going in the street for the Women's March On. And while we haven't won anything, we're coming up on that 100-day anniversary that the media at least loves to use as a benchmark.
God,
And
so
except for a Supreme Court justice being appointed, there's not a whole lot more to show for this administration's first 100 days. And I think some of that is that we've been out in the streets and raising our voices. So
Absolutely.
we need to continue doing that, and we're coming into that springtime when there's going to be a lot of them.
Well, I'll
So
tell you
pick
one.
which one you want to suit up for.
One of the most exciting things for me, Tom, is when I go to these organizing meetings for the People's Climate March, I hardly know anybody.
Yeah, I love that.
That is great
know, I
to see.
love that.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of new people, a lot of students coming in from DePaul, Loyola, wherever.
It's the best.
It's growing. It's not going to go away, and we've been a part of it.
All of
That's
the political
continuity.
organizing, the same thing.
So that's part of the tickler file too, Katie. So
Yes.
don't get too bummed.
No, we keep our hopes up. We really do. So we're going to have to move on, I'm afraid. But such good information, and if you need to delve into more, just go to NEIS, right?
www.neis.org is NEIS's. The Climate March website, https://tinyurl.com/pcm-chicago-orgs.
People's Climate March Chicago.
Yep.
You'll get it. You'll
See you
get
next
there.
Saturday.
See you next Saturday.
Thank you
Thanks
so much,
for being
Mr.
here,
Kraft.
babe.
Appreciate it.